All right, and we're live. So it's going to be kind of an unusual time for us to be meeting, but whoever shows up, great. Feel free to ask questions at any time. Um, but I kind of want to talk about something that you guys have been bringing up a lot here. Uh, is and I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the whole thing about like, you might like a wrestler. I know actually we have a match coming up. Was it like Nikki Ryan against Ramos? I forgot his first name, right? So, but at least it's not coming to me right now. But we are. Um, Hello, Alec. Thank you for joining me. Okay, so we're basically having kind of like a wrestler base or someone who with a wrestling base. So this is amateur folk style wrestling against a grappler, right? Like Nikki Ryan, right? And so why do we? Yeah, Tony Ramos. Thank you, Christopher. Um, but why do we see this? So it's not like we haven't seen this before where someone. Actually, I'm going to fix this. There we go. So it's not like we haven't had these kind of matches before, and it's like um, it I don't think it necessarily shows uh, the entirety of wrestling, right? Or uh, and but it also what I think it does kind of show these kind of matches shows like what is or what amateur wrestling has become over the years, right? So you got to know that both of them, like so, the freestyle and folk style both came from catch wrestling, right? So there are variations of it that so like in the Olympics they took the two most popular styles of wrestling at the time and they did a version of it where it was actually called Amateur Catches Catch Can, right? And then later they changed the name, and also too like when they first put Amateur Catches Catch Can into the Olympics, they automatically barred the submission holds and stuff, and then over the decades, the name changed to freestyle. Then also the time limit shortened because it used to be no time limit, and so there are a lot of things that changed, and with these different rule changes and structural changes, the sport changed itself, right? So same thing happened with folk style and collegiate wrestling. You'll see actually even in some of these earlier pics or photos, right, from really early collegiate matches, they were still in a wrestling ring that were set up, and you didn't see guys wearing singlets and stuff. That's actually something that's kind of a later development. They were dressed up like the professional wrestlers who were doing wrestling for real at that time, right? So um, that's kind of what you were seeing at that time. Where and then but then folk style also evolved away from the basically the catch wrestling rule set. Also shortened time limits, added points, point system. Uh, but yeah, you'll see some of these old collegiate photos where people are still using the double wrist lock position and all that, right? So uh, that, in my mind, right, is kind of one of the main reasons why you you get these matches where say like really a high level wrestler um, will lose in a grappling match, right? So it doesn't mean that the entirety of wrestling sucks, right? And jujitsu is better. Definitely doesn't mean that whatsoever. But from my point of view or my perspective, I think that the someone who comes from like a modern amateur wrestling background, they might not be as like as used to even the modern grappling game, right? Without having to like be someone like Nicky Rod, where he has an amateur background and then he had to spend a lot of time training in jujitsu to kind of get used to like these stylistic differences. Because I mean, yeah, they're different, right? So I think it's one of the things that I think about that I'd like to like share with you guys because then you'll see some trolls right online where they're trying to say like oh well wrestling sucks because like some guy lost a match but then yeah then you see Nicky Rod where it's like like he gets what second place in 80 cc. So, and definitely because he has more of a amateur wrestling background. So, um, in a way, it's like these kinds of like arguments really show like the people on either side sometimes are missing like the big picture, and I believe that having some, I would say, catch wrestling background is really going to be even more advantageous because it has kind of like the wrestling fundamentals, but without the rules, and you're aware of the different submission holds, right? That's kind of one of the things that I kind of wanted to share with you guys. So I see you guys are already commenting. Um, um, so let's go ahead and get to some of your comments. So the one that just came up right now, let me see. So uh, says from Rets, right? So, well, obviously the rules don't favor wrestlers, right? If I don't have to engage in the guard, right, it is really easy to back out of the guard, right? I think catches the perfect balance. Oh, you like music to my ears, right? No, but actually that's one of the things about jujitsu where it's like, yeah, it actually the rules somewhat, especially in a lot of say like IBJJF, which I'm pretty familiar with, right? Because I spent a couple years teaching and at a school that is really IBJJF. Like really, they're really strict about those rules. Um, but the rules ultimately do favor the wrestler. Say even if you get taken down, if you can, you'll lose points, right? If you get taken down, but if you get back on top, that's a sweep, right? You get a few points. Or if you can get the takedown and you don't allow them to sweep, you stay on top. You actually can win a match, or you can win you win several matches, right? If you before the person sits down, right? Before they sit down, or try to pull guard or whatever, if you can take them down or make it look like you're taking them down as they're going to sit down, you can get those takedown points. And if you can stay on top, because IBJJFs, a lot of these big tournaments have really short time limits. Also, I think some of the shortest are like 5 minutes. So, so maybe 5 to 7, sometimes 10 or whatever. Anyway, so it's less than 10 minutes. So if the person's really resisting you, if you can just get that takedown right away and then stay on top, then you actually won. And I do know that when I was back at Cobrinia's or whatever, one of the really famous black belts that we had there lost a match because a guy did that same strategy. Was able to get the takedown points. Nobody submitted each other. Time ran out, and our guy lost, right? Because of that, because of those points, right? So and that's one of the reasons why I also say is like you definitely want to still have even in jujitsu. I think ultimately it favors wrestlers, or if you want to kind of think of like that top down approach, truly it does still favor us. But I think you got to be cognizant of say like the seated guard stuff that the commenter just mentioned. So yeah, because it is tricky, right? Or even a lot of the barambolo stuff, right? So if you're on top, people are going to be like, especially the higher level people, they're going to be trying to do these things where it's like maybe they're really good at seated guard, trying to pull on arm in, or trying to set up all these different locks, or even chokes like triangle choke, or even leg locks and stuff like that. Um, but I think what that means is that you just have to be familiar with them, right? But I think with catch wrestling, that's how you get a little bit more familiar with them right off the bat. And I can give you an example. I mean, this is like it wouldn't be so scientific because it's just one person that I'll mention, but we've been talking about my student Carolyn. So she doesn't have too much background, right? So too much training time, but she was able to, and she's still able to. Like we rolled at a 10th planet today, and she's doing really well against those people, various belt ranks and all that. So because she's still applying a lot of these kind of defense things, which you so like even one of the other defense things. I'm kind of rambling. Like it's not like I want to. I have a lot of things to share with you guys too. Where it's like even some of the stylistic. like defense stuff that's different from catch wrestling to folk style or freestyle is even a lot of the wrist control stuff. If you do go underneath, right? So if you're in turtle, you can have a very effective turtle guard, right? Like if for those of you who come from a jiu-jitsu background, right? Hopefully that makes sense to you guys, or hopefully I'm speaking your language, right? But if you're in ref and it just benefits you so much to get that wrist control, right? And so even someone that's pretty new, only been doing catch wrestling for probably like a month or two, right? She's been able to really hold her own just by having good defense, really. So um, uh, I think so. I'm back to my point where it's like, yeah, a lot of times this wrestling versus jujitsu stuff isn't really like too valid of a point because it's like there's so many things to the big picture, and a lot of times there are a lot of similarities or a lot of things that overlap. But again, with regards to like amateur wrestling, you definitely aren't seeing the entirety of what wrestling is or what wrestling was, what it has been, and hopefully what it can be in the future again, right? So that's kind of one of the main points that I want to bring out. Hopefully you guys get me, right? So let's go ahead and get to more of your questions. See, let's get another one. So, oh yeah, Ryan says that Rampage Jackson triangle defense. Yeah, that was great. Like that big slam. Um, Rhett has another comment here. Let's see. So you play ref even with BJJ guys. I don't give up the hooks, and I don't stand up. Right. Um, yeah. So that's kind of one of the main things. You definitely. Well, even it kind of also doesn't matter if they get a hook in too because you can set up a lot of these reversals where you can hip heist out, right? So if they take your back, they got a hook in. If you have some good choke defense, right, you can set up some really good hip heist stuff. I think maybe that can probably be one of our uh, upcoming like instructional videos for you guys because it's really a great guard passer, right? If that's if that's what you guys are interested in, right? It's a great wrestling technique, um, but it can also, it can also really get you past their guard if you're doing grappling. All right. Oh, thank you, Christopher, for saying you get me. All right. So it's good talking to you. Um, so let's see some of these other questions. So yeah, Alec is like, when you're on top in full guard, you just wait until they unlock their ankles in order to do anything offensive, right? They need to do that first, right? So that's also a good point, and that actually leads to the point where it's like you got to you got to see where it's like the time limits have really changed the game a lot, right? So if you're in a let's say like in a 6 minute match or 5 minute match, right? You sometimes you got to really like just like go at them, right? You have to really get after it, but you have to remember that catch wrestling traditionally there was no time limits, and in our events we have a 20-minute time limit. We did have I sponsored a couple matches for a friends event, the one that was in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. Those were 10-minute matches. So and also I think with like even like a lot of the no gi submission only events, I think they're 10 minutes, right? So I think we are kind of seeing a little bit of a trend where it's like you're getting these longer matches because um, a lot of stuff has to transpire, or even your strategy can be different the longer the match is. So if you can build up your stamina, then you can start implementing these types of strategies where it's like you can allow the other person who's like really eager, maybe has like more of a background in shorter matches or even amateur wrestling, then you can allow them to fatigue themselves, right? Let them Let them try to come at you with full force. Just make sure your defense is good. Then you can then counter, right? So you can. I know this is gonna sound weird, but yeah, you can give them your back, right? Let them try to choke you out real hard, and just have good defense, good wrist control. They'll get tired. Right? All right. Let's see. A lot of it's a JBCS 888. A lot of pressure and destruction of the guard needs to be refined. Right. We need to make them to pay for everything. Right, and force them out of their comfort zone. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then I think that's again the type of strategy you definitely want to employ if you have a shorter match. Right. Um, definitely can be doing stuff like that. Right. You can do it at any time, but just make sure that um, you set things up, and then you can kind of then more incrementally get a better position right against that person. Right. If you're doing everything like full force all the time, sometimes you might be able to submit somebody. Maybe if they're a newer person or white and blue belts and stuff in jiu-jitsu, but someone with a great guard or great seated guard and all that stuff in like higher level belts, um, that they're just gonna keep you away, even if they have open guard and stuff. So, um, or even if you open their guard, right, and then you try to pass, right, they're gonna have some good hip movements, and they're gonna be able to defend against that. So you have to be aware of kind of like it might be better to incrementally say like if you open the guard, you can pass the one leg over you, keep pressure on top of that, and then incrementally kind of like shut them down so that you can pass. Like so you're blocking their hips from moving well enough to put you back into guard, right? So to re-guard you, right? So um, that's one of the things you want to kind of think about, especially for the time limit. So like a buddy of mine who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, like today we rolled like at least 10 minutes straight because that's how we both can kind of develop these kind of real strategies or kind of use these types of strategies. So kind of like that's one of the things that you can kind of think about where it's like styles who come from like having a short, like very short time limit. Yeah, they're gonna come at you real fast, right? So a lot of the freestyle people or folk style people, they're gonna try to hit you with everything they got. But if you got some good defense, some good wrist control, good sprawls, um, you can like hang in there, and a lot of times you can pin them or higher chance of submitting them sometimes when they're really rushing at you. Then you can set up like a double wrist lock or something and submit them there. All right. Do you guys have any other questions? I'll scroll to see what you guys are doing, or see if you guys the other comments you guys are making. Yeah, get your. Let me see. A lot of neck cranks. Yep, that's all good. It's all good. So make sure that you're trying to improve your position so you get some good leverage on those cranks. Um, let me see. Yeah, Kara. So from Christopher Morales. Yeah, Carolyn does have some jujitsu background, very little. That's how we met actually, and then um, with the wrestling or the catch wrestling in particular, really upped her game. Right. Al was saying that it's your opinion that um, um, yeah, the amateur wrestling was watered down from what catch wrestling was, like old boxing or at the start of MMA. People didn't like that. Right nowadays, people need a sport to be more regulated. All right, it's actually there is something to that. Definitely, that's why MMA kind of went from like what they used to call it the human cockfighting, right? Um, to something that's regulated. So where it's like you have like 5 minute rounds, and even the gloves, right? Those all had to be created and designed just for that style, really. Um, so yeah, there's a point to that where it's like we've kind of even as a society kind of like come to expect things to be done a certain way, and so something that's like more free, like a catch wrestling match, right? No time limits, and you have to go till someone wins, right, or someone wins or loses, right? Um, people don't necessarily have the patience for that, right? So that's why like a lot of these old matches could have gone on for an hour or more before someone got pinned or submitted. Right. Someone else had a good point that I want to try to bring up. What was it? Oh, Salvatore. Right. Why is it hard to find a wrestling gym? Is jiu-jitsu so popular? Really, I think that's really it in a nutshell. Jiu-jitsu is so popular; it's like all over the place. It's actually really easy for kids and adults to do. Like IBJJF really regulates what is done, right? So you'll have a lot of schools that are compliant to IBJJF rules. That rule set, which is actually very, very safe. So a lot of times, like even in brown and black belt, you still can't do much more beyond like that straight ankle, and then you can try like a toe hold, but like heel hooks, I think are barred still. Um, so then you'll have all these schools that keep with that rule set, um, and so then that actually kind of makes it a little bit more like friendly for anyone to come in. Wrestling, even amateur wrestling, still kind of has that grind where it's like, you really are gonna put someone on their back, even using pain compliance because they can't tap out, right? So yeah, it's tough to find a wrestling gym, a wrestling focused gym. It might be where it's like it's a jiu-jitsu gym or MMA gym, and then they might have like a wrestling class or something like that, right? And even harder to find maybe like a MMA gym or a jiu-jitsu gym where they'll have like I know one that's like a really famous MMA gym. I think they have wrestling Wednesdays. This is one of the really famous MMA gyms in Las Vegas. Um, yeah, so it's like jiu-jitsu every day and then wrestling Wednesdays. So um, that's kind of what we got. That's kind of what we got going nowadays. So if more people can actually get into, say, I would say catch wrestling in particular, because in a way it's like some of the amateur stuff. There isn't too much of a future in that, right? If you're already, say, if you already graduated college or something like that, if you haven't already uh, like shown your skill, right, and you haven't already been doing freestyle for a long time, where you can compete and get a spot on the Team USA and all that, then there might not be much for you to do, right, in freestyle, right, and definitely nothing for you in folk style, right, because that's only in our country, the United States, right, and then in our colleges where we're doing that, right, so it's freestyle in the rest of the world, right? So you cross our border to the north or to the south, they're doing freestyle, and then of course if you cross the oceans, definitely, right? So hopefully people can start like getting more into catch wrestling. So that's why I also have the online program. You can always just check our website if you live far away. If you're not in Los Angeles or on the East Coast in South Carolina with John Strickland. Um, Hopefully the East Coast, and they always say it's smaller than it seems, right? The 13 colonies, right? So I know it might be a drive or but it's like it's like it might be not as long as driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco, even like a 6 hour drive, right? Let's go to some more of your questions. Um, um, what do I think about Ken Shamrock? Was he robbed out of the first UFC? Shamrock wasn't allowed to wear wrestling shoes, but Gracie was allowed to wear his gi. Oh man, his John Peretti. So you want to hear about UFC one? You really want to talk about? You really want to search out John Peretti and his book? He was one of the first guys in this field, right? And he actually is the real person who coined that term MMA. And he's actually the one of the first persons to create the prototype for MMA gloves. So he was like he was one of the founding fathers really of MMA. He's a martial artist himself, and he has a lot of perspective on the very very harsh criticism. He basically says. This is just like other people who, especially nowadays, that are coming out where it's like UFC, especially in the that time was definitely a promotional thing for jiu-jitsu. Um, the way John puts it, it's like they they put a they take a they took it's not my words, guys. So I'm sure this is gonna trigger a lot of people. But he says you get a boy in his pajamas and you put him up against people who can't even tie their shoes. Of course, he's gonna win, right? Um, so a lot of the people were really hand selected. A lot of the opponents, right, were selected in particular for these early UFC matches, right? So you can find out all about that directly from John Peretti. I think he has his own website from a guy who was there, right? A guy who also created his own promotions. He was one of the early matchmakers for UFC. So don't get mad at me, right? Because this is probably something where it's like telling a pro wrestling fan that it's fake, right? Then they get all like get all shocked, right? Um, so don't at me, bro. Don't at me, bro, on on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, right? Because those are my words, right? But you had to hear it sometime, right? Santa Claus. Well, we wouldn't even get to Santa Claus, right? Let's see some more of your guys' question, right? Oh yeah, no problem, Salvatore. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Right. Yeah. Lesley 13. What do you think Kern could have done differently in his last match? Um, really, I really don't know what like who his training partners are or anything. I really don't know that. But I think that has to be different. That's pretty much all I can say. I haven't trained with him in like years. Right. Yeah, he did get his start here, but he had to move back home to Michigan, and so then he found different schools and different training partners, and yeah, that's it. Any other questions? Anything? Anybody? Right. So main thing is like, yeah, you are like if you see some like your favorite wrestler and he does a match, grappling match, even if he's trained or has been training in jiu-jitsu and he loses, it's like really it's not the end of the world and doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu is the best or whatever like that or even if he wins, doesn't mean wrestling is necessarily the best. Because catch wrestling is the best, right? And we're keeping real wrestling alive here, right? So, but um, yeah, just know it's not the whole picture, right? And so one of the comments online was like, oh, because maybe someone who claims to do catch wrestling lost a match, um, then like jujitsu has proven to beat us in like on the big stage and little stage. But it's like, do you guys remember this one guy? Probably one of the reasons why you've heard of catch wrestling, right? His name's Sakuraba, right? It's like on the biggest stage, especially at that time. Pride really was like outshining UFC, right? Especially the heavyweight division really was dominant, right? People really wanted to watch all those matches, but also these other matches, like the lighter weights, right? Like Sakuraba, where it's like he beat, was it like five Gracie family members who were that was when they were in their prime as well, right? And it was like I think still to this day the longest MMA match was uh, Sakuraba and Hoyce, right, where they threw in the towel, right? Um, so it's like I don't know. Is that like too long ago to count anymore? I really don't know. But Sakuraba's, I'm actually kind of being a little sarcastic. It's like I think all that stuff counts, right? All the statistics, right? Um, and also there was one thing done about 10 years ago. It was like some study done. I think it was like Sherdog. I gotta really try to find that because it's been coming up a bunch where it's like people based on what people are saying online. But um, I think it was Sherdog where they kind of took all the statistics of say a lot of the Japanese MMA fighters who had more of that kind of pro wrestling, kind of catch wrestling background, at least some of the training there, and they found that at least in the earlier days of MMA, because there are more people claiming, especially from Japan, the Japanese fighters were more claiming that they had some kind of catch wrestling background. So they took that into consideration, and they found that catch wrestling just by itself is one of the most effective styles in MMA. But then nowadays we don't have as many people claiming that anymore. And actually, even like kind of like the fighting epicenter of Asia really shifted away from Japan. Pride got shut down by UFC. They tried other promotions, but I think they've all kind of like they've remained small. And then you have one championship, which kind of rose up out of Singapore. So you're not having kind of like that much of an emphasis from coming from Japan anymore. Um, so that's why you're not necessarily like seeing these different types of people who are claiming to be catch wrestlers or pro wrestlers winning, right, or doing or even competing really, because that shift is gone, right, or that everything's shifted away. So, um, but yeah, I think it still counts, right? Don't you guys think that? All right, yeah, legendary, right? You love that guy, JBCS 888, right? So yeah, he's great. And again, he was trained by two of my coaches, Billy Robinson and Roy Wood, right? So two guys, actually Roy Wood. So for you guys who don't know, right? Because he's a really humble guy. He allows like the other members of Riley's gym to kind of get all the acclaim and stuff. But he is officially like the lineage holder of that gym, right? So when the really famous coach Billy Riley retired, he had Roy take over, and so when Roy took over the gym, he also sat there and helped Roy kind of coach a little bit, gave him some tips and stuff. Um, so um, he's really like the legitimate kind of like the person you're definitely, if you want to learn catch wrestling straight from Wigan, you got to go to Snake Pit, Wigan, or you got to go to Wigan directly and learn from Roy Wood, right? So those two don't have, so that is the Snake Pit, right? All right, and someone mentioned Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius, I mean, I think they're giving too much of catch wrestling credit to Matt Hume, right? So they're claiming pancreation and all that. But yeah, it'd be great um, if he like learned even more specifically catch wrestling. Because if you look at the way Demetrius Johnson um, uh, does stuff, right? Even in his matches, when he kind of grapples. I was at one championship event where it was like a press conference, and so they had an open workout with Demetrius, and he was doing a lot of more jujitsu looking type techniques. Right, but it'd be great if he did some more of the catch wrestling type stuff. But whatever he's doing is working for him, so probably won't change. All right, you guys have any other questions? Keep on commenting. I wanted to make sure that I came online for you guys at least. Basically this week the schedule's been pretty crazy, pretty hectic. A lot of different things been going on. Trying to plan a lot of stuff for you guys as well. It's just in California, we have a lot of especially we have a lot of restrictions still, especially in LA County because our population's so high. So we have a lot more COVID-19 cases and deaths here. So we still have some restrictions on what we can do and what we can't do. And so, but I think there might be some good, at least for what we can do. So we can probably try to do some stuff quickly for you guys. But still, some of the logistics have to be worked out. So hopefully we can have some more events, more matches and stuff for you like really soon out of here in California. So you guys can always keep in touch. You can send messages, especially if you're interested in competing, because some of you guys will message me with those questions. So just keep in touch, and I guess maybe we'll kind of end it now. But keep the questions coming, and thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.